Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy in Nigeria. Chief WALE EDUN is a veteran economist, investment banker, and public servant with over 40 years of experience in corporate finance, economics, and international finance. He holds a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of London and a master's degree in development economics from the University of Sussex. He has held senior roles in Chase Merchant Bank, Lehman Brothers, the World Bank, IFCF, and Investment Banking and Trust Company, now Stanbic IBTC. He later founded Denham Management Limited, which evolved into Chapel Hill Denham. He also served as Lagos State Commissioner for Finance in 1999 to 2007. In August 2023, he was appointed Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy by President Bola Tinubu. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Chief Adebayo Olawale Edun.
Profession. Let me recognize my colleagues, the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Finance, Mrs. Lydia Shehu Jafia. Let me recognize the Permanent Secretary, Special Duties Minister of Finance, Mr. Raymond Machi. And there are so many others here, but I already came slightly out of sync. So I will use the usual Nigerian refrain. All protocols duly observed. It is a distinct honor to address this important gathering at your 55th annual conference. And the theme is Building Resilience, Realigning Reforms for Nigeria's Development. And of course, it is not just timely, but it resonates deeply with the journey which Nigeria is on at the moment. I'm looking for my slides. I'm trying to check technology because I don't want you looking at me all the time. I prefer you to look at the slides that have been prepared so that you can have a better sense of the trajectory, a better sense of the magnitudes that we are talking about. So I will give them a chance to catch up, if I may. Are we getting ready? Maybe they will catch up with us when they're ready. Under the able leadership of His Excellency, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Nigeria, as we all know, has embarked on bold and politically challenging reforms aimed at dismantling long-standing price distortions and restoring policy credibility. When we say long-standing, we are talking about decades. We all know that the constant refrain, even at conferences such as this, was what will be done about the major distortions in economy, the major distortions in foreign exchange, the major distortion caused by fuel subsidy. It is under the presidency and the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu that those long-standing burdens on the Nigerian economy and society have been removed decisively and even in a very, very swift manner. And these reforms have not only reset our economic fundamentals, but have also ushered in a new era, a new incentive framework, one that rewards productivity, one that rewards innovation, and one that rewards investment, capital formation. And if we have forgotten, the previous incentive framework that was in place rewarded what we call rent seeking. It rewarded unproductive activity, which benefited those who had privileged access to the resources of the country, while for the majority, with their ideas, their business plans, and their dreams, they didn't have access to opportunity. You know the figures. GDP growth in the second quarter above 4%. An important benchmark, an important inflection point, an important breakthrough to a new level, above 4%, compared to about 3.48% in the same period, the second quarter of 2024, and even in the first quarter of 2025, just 3.1%. This is the first time. Thank you. This is the first time in a decade, once we leave out the era of the post-COVID period, because things went down so low that, of course, once you rebounded from that, it showed relatively high figures because you are coming from a very low base. You all understand what I'm saying? This is the first time in a decade that quarterly growth has exceeded 4%. And importantly, the industrial sector nearly doubled its growth rate to 7.45%, reflecting investment, productivity increase, and clearly renewed investor confidence. The all-important fight against inflation is being tackled headlong. And it's a fight for all, because without controlling inflation, the most vulnerable in the society are left very, very much exposed. Those who have the opportunity to pass on costs, to rely on savings and so forth, may be able to battle and manage. But inflation is the number one enemy of all in the society. It has eased to about 20.1% in August, from nearly 22% in July. And of course, it is supported by exchange rate stability. It's supported by lower energy costs and improved food supply. When you look at 2024 and 2025, food production has increased. The foreign exchange reserves and the exchange rate. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Foreign exchange reserves recorded, as we know, $42 billion in September of 2024, and the Naira has appreciated in recent times, and the exchange rate premium between the open market and the official market has narrowed, supporting overall stability. And that particular metric, we commend what the central bank has been able to do in terms of exchange rate stability and even in terms of increase in reserves. And the two are obviously related, but it matters at all levels in the society, and it provides confidence when that rate is stable. The trade balance, the trade surplus at 7.4 trillion naira in the second quarter of 2025, up from 130 billion naira in Q2 2023, is driven by a more competitive exchange rate. But these are not just numbers. They are signs that the economy is regaining its economic footing, and the nation is rebounding and regaining its economic momentum and way forward. Our fiscal position has improved significantly. Revenue has grown by over 70% in nominal terms in the past 2 years. We know, as we said, that there has been liberalization on the key prices, market pricing of foreign exchange, market pricing of petroleum products. But we've also added automation-led revenue collection under the New Hope agenda. But expenditure pressures do still persist. And how and why? Debt service costs. When you look at the fact that in June 2023, interest rates were 8%. But then, by the time the unauthorized and over the limit use of ways and means was stopped, there was a stepping back from the illegality of using ways and means above the prescribed limits. And it happened suddenly. What that meant was that those who had, they were used to, whenever there was a need for funds, they just debited ways and means. They were now faced with going to the market and competing in the marketplace for funds, for money market funds and for capital market funds. And what that meant was initially, when you look at, we know that it's on the monetary side that interest rates were raised to support the exchange rate and so on. But the first fight in that area, the first salvo was sounded by the fiscal authorities. We raised T-bill rates. We had to raise treasury bill rates in order to attract the funding that we needed to go to the marketplace for, instead of relying on, as I said, unauthorized use of ways and means, unauthorized printing of money. And it's a huge challenge because interest rates gradually and steadily moved from 8% in 2023 to peak in November of 2024 at 24%. The government was having to fund at 24%. So the challenge of helping to fight inflation and stabilize the economy fell heavily on the fiscal side, and to date, we have been able to meet up to expectations. We've met every payment, we've met every requirement that was asked of us in terms of debt servicing, both domestic and foreign. Thank you. As I said, debt service costs surged, treasury bills rates rose, and the debt service, the budgeted was 2.7 trillion, but at the end of the day, it rose to 6.7 trillion in 2024. And of course, the demand for development, I see the time is up. Is that for me? I'm sure you don't agree it's for me. Can I go on? Thank you very much. The demand for development funding does remain high, with our infrastructure stock at less than 40% of GDP, and elsewhere in the developing world, in the rich countries or the most developed countries, 75% is about the norm or the average or even the benchmark. So we have a way to go. And we all know that investment in public assets, investment in infrastructure is critical. So to address this, we are deploying innovative initiatives, especially in galvanizing domestic resources amid global liquidity constraints. For lack of time, I would just say we are Oyo on your own. The international community has stepped back from development finance, has stepped back from multilateralism, has stepped back from empathy for the developing world or anybody but themselves. We are in a new era. Things have moved to the right. And so the kind of help and support that we could expect from the international community is no longer there. Maybe for things like pandemics like COVID, maybe for climate, which is of concern. But as for meeting SDGs and all those things that concern the developing world, we are on our own. We have to rely on our own domestic resource mobilization, which is fair enough, and which we are rising to that challenge. And our initiatives in that sense, they include formalizing the large informal sectors, as we saw by the recently rebased GDP, particularly areas like real estate and agriculture, bringing them more into the formal sector where I dare say they can be helped, but they can be taxed. So that is one area that we're looking at for resource mobilization. And also, of course, expanding the tax base through the Tax Reform Act. Many of your members have participated in the thought leadership, in the discussion, and I dare say, even in the membership of the key committee and subcommittees to put that all-important act into place. And it harmonizes the processes. It reduces multiple taxation, and it will, we believe, help to enhance productivity, which is the key. When you have investment that increases productivity, it grows the economy, it creates jobs. And when people have jobs, they have incomes, and that's how they are lifted out of poverty. That's the straightforward, simple, and clear trajectory that Mr. President is putting Nigeria on. In addition to expanding the tax base, we do have asset financialization, making the most of our resources, making the most of our assets. Murphy has huge assets for the federal government. NSIA, the Sovereign Investment Authority, has huge assets that they are holding for the Federation. We must optimize them. As the call went out to NNPC when the board was recently revamped, that they must optimize in the all-important oil sector, must drive in investment so that we benefit from those resources maximally. And of course, it's critical to strengthen digital revenue collection. And I'm sure here some of your members are part of that conversation. It is through digitization and automation that we'll get the efficiency that brings into government coffers the funds that are due to government. There is a very important exercise that is currently going on to ensure that through automation, we not only have a clear view of the accounts of government, and people are not used to that. The situation that we met in Ministry of Finance in the Accountant General's office was that if you wanted to know what the balance was on any given account, you had to call central bank in this day and age. So you can imagine the inefficiency and the dangers of such an opaque system. After concerted effort, and it took years, these things, change management, introduction of new policies, they take time, particularly in the area of automation and digitalization. On August 1, we got full transparency, full link-up between the Office of the Accountant General, the Ministry of Finance, and the Central Bank. We thank the Central Bank for their cooperation and collaboration in that achievement. And as you know, with technology, it becomes incremental. It becomes, what do they call, it rapidly builds on itself and becomes, the advances become geometric. So by October 1, we introduced a central billing system. And what that does, and I'm sure many of you are familiar, but what that does is that for the very first time, when somebody is given a bill to pay, a tax bill, a levy, a user fee, If he's given a bill of 100 and he pays 20, before there was no way of reconciling it. As of October 1, if he pays 20, the 80 will follow him around. His office will know it. The authorities will know it. He will know it. Until it's paid, it will stay there as a liability to be paid by that person, that individual, or that institution. That is the difference that is being made with technology. So, thank you. While revenue is critical, of course, expenditure rationalization is equally vital. And we are improving public financial management, reducing leakages, cutting waste, prioritizing capital spending, productive capital spending. And you will be happy, you will be pleased to note that we are working very closely with the National Assembly, the relevant committees of the National Assembly, to restore the January to December budget cycle and to curtail budget extensions from once we enter 2026 fiscal year. The aim is to curtail what we've seen in recent years where the budget or the capital budget or aspects of the budget are in fact extended to the next year. That will be a thing of the past going on the trajectory we are on. And additionally, of course, we are always looking to fund as cheaply as possible. The cheapest money is from the development partners. And we are part of the worldwide conversation saying to these multilateral development banks that we are not getting enough. They're not giving us enough funding, cheaply enough, and at scale. So if they want to know what we want, that really is it. We like the various ideas and so forth, but we know what we need to do, and what we want from them most is affordable funding at scale. So Nigeria is charting a transformative path toward a resilient, diversified, and globally competitive economy. And the first aspect, the first metric that you look at when you're trying to build a globally competitive economy is a competitive exchange rate, which we have, which is allowing producers not just to look at the domestic market, but equally, especially as it earns them foreign exchange, they can look at the ECOWAS market of about 300 million people. They can look at the continental, the Africa-wide market under the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, 1.3 billion people. So the opportunities are there. And our strategic priorities include driving non-oil export growth, enhancing domestic productivity, and fostering inclusive prosperity. As I said earlier, the world is turning its back on inclusiveness, on empathetic initiatives, on helping the poorest and the most vulnerable, but not in Nigeria. The President's commitment is to rapid, sustained, inclusive growth. When you want to look at rapid, by the time you have come from 3 point something to over 4% growth, you're headed in the right direction. The target in the immediate term is 7% per annum GDP growth. And it's not just a figure. What does it represent? It represents more than double population growth. If you can grow at that rate and more year after year, you can now attack the all-important poverty figures. You can look and see that millions of Nigerians are being lifted out of poverty, and that is the ultimate aim of Mr. President's renewed hope agenda. So we are transitioning to a fully liberalized economy, anchored on openness, competition, and efficiency, where the private sector, which is 90% of the GDP, comes from the private sector. So the private sector has to be the engine of growth. They have to come to the table, they have to make the investments, and the government will play the role of enabler. So our strategy is based on productive capital formation through increased private investment, and they are coming. I mean, as I mentioned that there are lots of fora at this time. Just a week or two ago, we had the National Economic Society. Currently, we have the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, and of course, the Lion King, the ICAN conference. And so, these conversations are critical, and we are focusing and trying to tell the story of the improvements in the economy and the opportunity that is creating. And so, as I said earlier, we are targeting 7% per annum GDP growth in the medium term. And to catalyze this growth, investment in infrastructure is critical. The infrastructure deficit, I gave the figures earlier, and we do recognize that public resources are limited. And therefore, what that does is it means government moves out of the way and gives the private sector the opportunity. And the complementary role of the private sector cannot be overemphasized. In road, in rail, in all important energy, we do have the HDMI, the Highway Development and Management Initiative, covering about 5,000 kilometers of road, which the private sector is ready and willing and able to come and build the roads and appropriately, where there are alternatives, they will toll those roads, collect their money back, and maintain them. Likewise, we have in the energy sector the all-important M300 initiative. That is a World Bank, African Development Bank initiative by the year 2030, to provide to 300 million Africans that don't currently have access to electricity, to provide them with electricity. We know the biggest chunk of beneficiaries will be from Nigeria. The biggest investment block will come to Nigeria, about $32 billion in providing energy access. And of course, that is the key to industrialization. It needs no gainsaying. You don't have industrial development if you don't have energy. And once again, I will say, within the current investment climate is a huge opportunity. And people are taking these opportunities. Yesterday, I was taken around. His Excellency, the Vice President, was representing Mr. President at the other fora. And I was taken around, and the Shell representative at their kiosk, he said, we just invested $5 billion. And he named the field. So that is the momentum that we are creating. I was in Matori a couple of months ago, and an international world-class company said they used to import the product. It was a food product. And they said, based on the changes that they started to see 18 months ago, they have invested in a factory. I was the one that had the privilege of cutting the tape. It had modern technology alongside labor-intensive activity to speak to the employment imperative. And they said the reason why they made this investment, and there was a place there that was empty, and I said, what's that place for? That's where we're going to expand to. And the reason why they had made that investment was based on the changed, improved, and conducive investment environment. And what we need is for that to become the narrative, that to become the rule. And this country will definitely move in the direction we all know that it can. There are bold investments in the digital economy, recognizing that over 65% of our population is under the age of 35. There is what we will all come to know. It's titled the Bridge, Project Bridge. It's a World Bank supported project. It's an initiative of the Honorable Minister for Communication, Innovation and Digital Economy, Dr. Bosun Tijani. And what will it do? It's a 2 billion public-private partnership that will expand our fiber optic network by covering 90,000 kilometers from the existing 35,000 kilometers. And it will have 70% penetration nationwide, reaching virtually all local governments and even all wards. That is what the young people of Nigeria need. That is what they are being given to empower them to do what they do best, which is they are at the top of the class. They are at the top of the league when it comes to fintech, when it comes to technological innovation. And so this initiative addresses the digital infrastructure gap. It promotes inclusion, especially, as I said, for young people, but also for women, paving the way for what we know is going to be a technology-driven future. I will just say that no economy can grow sustainably without investing in its people. And we have a whole range of people-oriented initiatives. You have NEL Fund, the Nigeria Education Loan Fund. We have in the health sector, the Digital Health Initiative to provide personnel, to provide facilities, particularly at the local government level, at the health center level. And there's the presidential initiative for the value chain within the health sector, which basically is empowering and encouraging investment in the health sector production in Nigeria as opposed to the current dependency on imports. And of course, in that health sector, it's critical. We also want vaccine nationalism and health nationalism can do. So it's doubly important, not only for the investment opportunity, the profit opportunity, but for strategic reasons that we produce more of our health products. Moving to financial sector reform and market integrity. We have enacted the Investment and Securities Act 2025, strengthening investor protection and market integrity. We all know about the bank recapitalization that is aimed at increasing resilience and, of course, credit delivery to the economy. When we talk about investment, clearly the investors will say that, yes, we have a stable environment, the exchange rate is stable, access to foreign exchange, we have a liquid market, there's freedom of entry, which is key in a market. However, interest rates are relatively high. As inflation comes down, the natural thing is for interest rates to also come down and become more affordable. But bank recapitalization is clearly an important initiative in providing funding for the economy. And let me just mention, in terms of initiatives, the last one I mentioned for today, the national single window. We are an import-dependent economy. We are looking for efficiencies. We're looking for savings, and we're looking for export competitiveness. We're looking for building a competitive economy across the board. And the National Single Window Project, which by the first quarter of 2026, by the grace of God, will be live, is going to transform trade processes, is going to bring additional revenue, and is going to bring efficiencies to import and export transactions. And of course, it is, in keeping with the times, a digital platform. And we cannot overemphasize the importance of digitization and technology in virtually all that we do. May I bring things back home? Let me speak now directly to ICAN and the accounting profession, including those in the overflow room and those still queuing to get in. I'm not an accountant, but I would like to feel that I can say, as custodians of financial integrity, your role is pivotal in this reform journey. I urge you, President, Council, members, I urge ICAN to develop a transparent rating model for accounting firms, especially in tax audit that is aligned with global standards. Perhaps you can have a 4-star to 0 system that promotes accountability and excellence. I think ICAN should champion rigorous financial reporting and ethical stewardship among public sector accountants, ensuring responsible resource management and fostering trust in financial disclosures. I mentioned earlier that one of the responsibilities of Ministry of Finance, of the Accountant General's Office, is to ensure that we identify government funds wherever they are, with the aid of technology, identifying them and bringing them into the purview and the remit, and indeed the coffers of government for use in favor and to the benefit of the people of Nigeria. Modern accountants are key drivers of sustainability in reporting, of embedding what we call ESG principles into financial statements. I, and indeed all of us, value ICAN as a core partner in shaping sound policy and ensuring fiscal discipline. As enablers of fiscal reform, you are, and you do, support robust budgeting. You do enforce consequence management. And we look forward to continuing to rely on you to enforce value for money in public expenditure. Your expertise is essential in building the resilient institution that Nigeria needs, and it needs them now, and it needs ICAN, as well as others, to come to the table at this time in our transformative journey. Given the theme of your conference this year and our need to move to the next stage of reforms,